Hey, today we're talking about 11 very common mistakes for you to avoid when you are writing emails in English. Let's go. First up is not including any greeting or using an inappropriate greeting. So your greeting comes at the very beginning of your email. This is when you say hello and the person's name. So hello Julie or dear Julie, for instance. These are very common greetings. When you don't have any greeting at all, so you just don't write anything, this can be considered as rude when you are writing professional emails. So you do always need to include a greeting. Another mistake with greetings is using generic or general greetings like dear sir or madam, or dear sir / madam, or to whom it may concern. Now, greetings like this were more commonly used in the past. However, nowadays they are seen as very generic, general, and impersonal. And it shows your recipient that you don't even know who you're writing to, okay? That is the message that it gives. When I receive emails that say to whom it may concern or dear sir / madam, this shows me that the writer doesn't even know if I'm a man or a woman. They don't know my name. They don't know who I am. So why would I bother to take the time to read an email from someone who has no idea of who I am, right? It's just like receiving a letter from a stranger. It doesn't really make sense, okay? So greetings like this are very inappropriate. Instead, just keep it simple. You can simply write hello, good afternoon, good morning, dear, and the person's name. And if you don't know the person's name, you can also write the department or the title of the person that you are writing to. So for example, your greeting could be dear hiring manager or dear marketing manager. Another inappropriate greeting is simply writing the word dear with no name after it. Dear in English is a term of endearment. This is a very personal kind of nickname that you use with people who you know on a personal level and you are close to. So for example, it's common to hear a grandmother calling their grandchild dear. If you're not sure, keep it simple. Just stick to hello or dear and the person's name. Next up is not writing a clear subject line or leaving the subject line blank altogether. This is also seen as unprofessional because your recipient doesn't know what the email is about. If you leave your subject line blank, chances are a lot of times that people will not even open the email that you send, especially if they don't know you or you've never met before. Sometimes people forget to include a subject line, but it is very important to include a clear and concise subject line. So when your email arrives in your recipient's inbox, they know right away what this email is regarding. You haven't wasted any other time and you come across as professional. Next up is writing in all capital letters. Sometimes when people want to emphasize something or emphasize that a point is important, they capitalize the full sentence or the full point. Unfortunately, this comes across like yelling in English. It's like the written form of yelling, and it is seen as aggressive and rude. Instead, if you want to emphasize a point, you can simply bold the text. Okay, you can simply bold the text rather than using capitalization. If you capitalize everything, even in your subject line, it comes across as aggressive and yelling. So avoid writing in all capitals. And this also goes for when you are messaging or chatting with someone, okay? If you do use all capitals when you are chatting or messaging or texting, this is very common when you want to express that you are actually really angry. And generally speaking, in business, especially in business emails, that should not be the case. Next is being too formal, overly formal. And yes, there is such a thing as being too formal, even in business or professional emails. So let's imagine that you are writing an email to a colleague who you interact with on a regular basis. Maybe you work in the same office and you see each other all the time. Instead of writing an email like this, Dear John, I would like to formally request your attendance at tomorrow's meeting. Kindly provide confirmation at the earliest. Now, this email is unnecessarily formal and unnecessarily wordy, to be honest. Instead, remember that you interact with this colleague on a regular basis. You still do need a level of formality, but it can be much more neutral than this. So instead, you could write something like this. Hello, or dear, or hi, John, or good morning. Please confirm that you can attend tomorrow's meeting. Thank you. Okay, so this is still formal, but it's not over the top, unnecessarily formal. A lot of people tend to think that being more formal or more complicated or more complex equals being more professional, and that is simply not the case. Generally speaking, you want to keep your tone neutral, but clear, polite, and respectful. So be careful not to be over the top with your level of formality. Now, the next common mistake is actually being too informal, too soon or too early on in a correspondence or in a relationship that you are developing professionally. So generally speaking, you want to start your communication on a more professional or more formal level. And as you get to know the person and as you go back and forth and your email thread gets longer, you have more communication, more correspondence, you can become a little more neutral and slightly more informal. Generally, you want to match the other person's level of formality. So for example, if someone writes to me, Dear Julie, I write back with Dear Joe, okay? And as we write back and forth, we might change to hello Julie, and I would write back, hello Joe, okay? And once we're comfortable, we've written to each other quite a lot, it's okay to write hi Joe, okay? So this is a normal and natural progression of the level of formality in emails. So be aware of how formal the other person is and be aware of when and if they change their tone, and you can actually mirror that same tone back to them. Another common mistake is forgetting about your tone altogether. I talk about tone all the time on this channel because it's such an important part of English communication. When you are writing emails, unfortunately, you don't have the benefit of body language and gestures and facial expressions. So you really need to rely on your words and your tone. So it's very important to make sure that you are coming across as clear, organized, respectful, polite, and professional. Now, this doesn't always come naturally to everyone, and it does take some practice. I know that a lot of times we're very focused on getting our information, our vocabulary, and our grammar correct, and we sort of overlook our tone as a result. But you want to make sure that you are coming across as a professional, especially when you're writing to someone new. So always pay attention to your tone. And just to recap, if you haven't heard me talk about tone in my other videos, your tone is basically the feeling that you create for your reader. So when they read your message, what feeling do they get? Do they feel like this person is really professional? This person is really polite. This person is really helpful. This person is really organized, all right? So be careful with your tone. Next up is using emojis or emoticons, or using too many of them in professional emails. Now, I have seen emojis or emoticons used appropriately in marketing emails, mass marketing emails when you join a mailing list and so on. So there is a time and a place to use these emoticons in business. However, that is generally reserved more for when a business or a brand is writing to their customer base or their client base or sending out mass marketing emails, okay? So be careful generally not to use emojis or not to use too many of them because it does come across as unprofessional. I know that they're fun to use, and I use them when I'm chatting with my friends and family, but not in professional correspondence. The next mistake is using an unprofessional email address. A lot of people made their first and maybe only email account when they were in school, when they were a student. And a lot of people still have that. I still have my first email address, but luckily it included my name, okay? So it's not too bad, but I don't use it for any professional correspondence, all right? So if you have an email address like tennisgirl123@whatever.com. This is an example of an unprofessional email address. So it's not appropriate to use this type of email address when you are trying to market yourself, offer your services, or to apply for a job. If you were to write an email address like this on your CV or your resume, it would be considered quite unprofessional. If hiring managers receive emails from people who have unprofessional email addresses, they're very, very unlikely to look at the application at all, okay? So if you are still using an unprofessional email address that you made back when you were in school or when you were younger, please, please, please make another one. So you want to try to include some version of your name if it's available, maybe first and last name, maybe your first initial and your last name, whatever you can, but you don't want to use email addresses that are talking about your hobbies or the way you look or anything like that, all right? So make sure that you create a professional email address. And if you are working on your own business and you're trying to sell services or products, it's definitely worth investing in a professional email domain as well, instead of Gmail or Hotmail, okay? You want to get at and then your business name.com. Another big one is not proofreading. So there is no excuse to be sending an email that has lots of mistakes and errors in it, whether it is spelling, grammar, punctuation, formatting, whatever the case may be. There's really no reason or excuse because there's so many tools available nowadays to help you catch these mistakes. Even if you are not able to catch them yourself, you can use grammar and spell checking tools that will help you. So always take the time to proofread your emails before sending them. Let's say that you're sending a job application and you're tired, you've been working on it for hours. I always encourage you to step away from it if you can and come back a little bit later with some fresh eyes, and then you are going to be more likely to catch your mistakes. A lot of times when we're tired and overworked, it's very hard for us to catch our mistakes. And I always say that it's not the end of the world to make mistakes. Making mistakes is part of the learning process, and this is true. But when it comes to emails, you have the luxury of time. You have the time to write, to check, to rewrite, to edit, to proofread, and that is a huge benefit. So take advantage of that. When you're speaking, of course, this is a little bit different. You can't catch every mistake as you're speaking, but when you're writing, you are able to do that. Next up is not formatting your emails. Now, formatting your emails refers to how you physically organize them. When you skip a line, when you leave a space, how you divide your text into paragraphs, if you use a bulleted or numbered list, for example. A lot of times I receive emails that are written as one big chunk of text, and it's quite hard to read and to sift through. Of course, I can read it and I can understand it, but it takes time and it comes across as unprofessional. It's like the person just wrote down everything they were thinking and didn't really take the time to separate their ideas. So it is important, even if your email is short, to make sure that it is formatted correctly. Now, if you do want to learn how to write emails professionally from start to finish, this is something I teach in detail in the Essential English for Business course. This is an online self-study course, so you can learn the essentials of business English at your own pace. You have lifetime access, so you can go over the course as many times as you need to. I will link the Essential English for Business course down below so you can learn more. And finally is forgetting your attachments, not attaching documents or links that you need to, or having unnamed attachments, okay? So sometimes we forget to attach things, it happens, but you need to be careful and make sure to attach any files that you are making a reference to in your email. So if you're talking about a document or a report and you don't attach that document or a report, what's going to happen is it's going to waste the recipient's time because they're going to have to come back to you, ask you for the report, you're going to have to go back to them. You want to show people that you respect their time and you want to take the time to attach all necessary information the first time. As well, a lot of people overlook naming the files that they are attaching appropriately. Sometimes they are untitled or unnamed files, and that is not very helpful. When we download attachments, we save them to our computer, and it is very helpful for us to have a name for that file, okay? When you open an email, you can see the attachments and you can see the file names right away. So make sure that you are not forgetting to attach relevant files that you talk about in that email and name those files appropriately. So there you have it, common mistakes to avoid so that you can write more professional emails in English. Now, don't forget to check out the Essential English for Business course if you are trying to take your professional English to the next level. That's linked down below. I also have a free ebook for you, English Conversations Made Simple, that's also linked below this video. If you enjoyed the lesson, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps me to reach more English learners around the world. So thank you for watching, learning, and spending time with me today. I'll see you very soon in another one.